Hi there. This is a video for Intermediate Algebra. This is Unit 2, Section 1, Guided Notes. And this is a section about writing linear equations. All right, so I'm going to write that up here, that we are writing linear equations. All right, and if you look at your objectives, as students will be able to write linear equations in two variables using slope-intercept form to represent the relationship between two quantities, and you will be able to interpret the slope and y-intercept of a linear model. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to highlight this word down here, linear equations, and just to be clear that these are equations that represent lines, okay? And so one of the things that we use to write equations is we use this concept called slope and the concept called y-intercept, okay? So let's first dive into slope. Slope is a measure of steepness, okay? And you have four kinds of slope. You have a positive slope, you have a negative slope, you have a zero slope, and you have an undefined slope. All right, and so if the line is going in this direction, up and to the right, it's a positive slope. Negative slope is down to the right. Horizontal line has zero slope, and then a vertical line has undefined slope. Now, usually what we do is we measure slope using the variable m. And we usually call it rise over run, or we call it the change in y, and that triangle means change, that's delta. Change in y divided by the change in x. Okay, we can also use the slope formula to calculate slope, all right? And that's given 2 points, given points x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, comma, y sub 2, our slope can be calculated using the formula m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. All right, so we got a bunch of different ways of doing that, and we'll talk more about that, but that's what slope is, okay? If we go over to our y-intercept, this is the location where the line intersects the y-axis, okay? So I'm just going to give you an example here. Let's say you have a line here that looks like this, okay? What I'm interested is labeling our y-intercept, and we call that our b value. And the value where it crosses the y-axis is at 2, so b would be equal to 2, okay? And that's the idea, all right? So the whole thing, if we put this together and we use this thing called slope-intercept form, it's a way for us to write equations of lines where we have a slope and a y-intercept. And so I'm going to write this out, where you have y equals mx plus b, all right? M, this is your slope. Okay, remember that this is a measure of steepness, and that the b value, this is your y-intercept, okay? And this is where the graph crosses or the y-axis. So where the graph, I'm sorry, I should say line, where the line crosses the y-axis, okay? So that's the idea. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at different types of equations. We're going to graph equations, and we're also going to write equations. So the first example I have is this one, and it says, what is the graph of y equals 4/5 x plus 2? So what I want to first identify is that this equation is given to us in slope-intercept form. We can identify our slope, all right? So in this case, m is equal to 4/5. And the b value is equal to 2. All right, so that's your y-intercept. So you have your slope here, you have your y-intercept here, And one of the other things that I like to call the y-intercept, this is our starting point, all right? This is the location where we can automatically plot a point on that graph, okay? So just based off looking at this equation, I can come over here and I can plot this point right here at 2 on our y-axis. Let's label those x-axis, y-axis. And then what I want to do is I want to use my slope to generate more points, okay? Now remember that slope was equal to rise over run. Remember you had 4 kinds of slope: positive slope, negative slope, zero slope, undefined slope. And so because this number is a positive number, it's going to go up to the right. Now my rise is 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count up 4 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and then I'm going to move over 5 units. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's going to be my other point on this graph. Now I can continue this pattern. I can go up another 1, 2, 3, 4 and go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can plot another point. You can do as many of these as you want. You really only just need 2. But you can also go this way. You can go down and to the left. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plot another point. And what we can do from here is we can now draw a line that connects all of those points. And this line here represents this equation, okay? Now let's jump over here and do the same thing over here. Now in this one, same thing. You have a slope, you have a y-intercept. Now both of these are negative. So, you know, my slope is equal to negative 3/4, and my y-intercept is equal to negative 5. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to start here by plotting negative 5 on the y-axis. And then because I have a slope of negative 3/4, my slope is going to go down to the right. So positive, negative, 0, undefined. Because it's negative, I'm going to go this way. All right, so I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to plot a point. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's my point. Now, that's really all I need. Okay, I don't have to do all of those other points because you only need 2. So if I just put that line in, you know, one of the other things is that you can continue that pattern of going, say, up 1, 2, 3, going to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that point is on the line. Going up 1, 2, 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that point is on the line. Okay. All right, that's all I've got for that page. Let's take a look at the next one. So now on this example, what I want to do is I want to look at, I want to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So what I need to come up with is I need to come up with my slope, and I need to come up with my y-intercept. Now the first thing that I want to notice here, positive, negative, 0, undefined, is that my line is going in this direction here. Okay, and so because it's going down to the right, I'm going to have a negative slope, okay? And so from here, I can label my slope as negative. And what I want to think about is that I'm going down 1, 2, 3, and to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a slope of negative 3/4. Now, my y-intercept, the point at which my graph crosses the y-axis, is at 1. So once I have that information, I can write my equation in y equals mx plus b form. And I can then write this as y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1. And that's our answer. All right, so just being able to look at this graph and do that is what we want to see, okay? Now, these gave us some specific points. Over here, you have a couple of points as well, all right? And So over here, one of the things that we can do is, let's label, we want to find our slope because we're being asked the same question. So we need a slope and a y-intercept. First thing I'm going to calculate is our slope. So we're going up 1, 2, and then we're going to the right 1, 2, 3. So our slope is 2/3. Now remember, we've got 4 kinds: positive, negative, 0, and undefined slope. So when I look at this, because it's going up to the right, it's got a positive slope. All right, so that number is positive. Now our y-intercept here is down here at -2. So b equals -2. So then we can write our equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. And I would write this as y is equal to 2/3 x, and then plus -2, or you could just write this as y equals 2/3 x and then -2. However it doesn't matter how you write that, okay? So now, what if you're not given a graph, okay? And so one of the things is that, you're not given the y-intercept. So the question's asking you this: how can you find an equation of a line that passes through 2 points if neither of them is the y-intercept? Consider the line that passes through the points -1, -2, and 3, 4. So one of the things that you want to think about on this is that you're just given 2 points, okay? And this is really the algebra way of doing it, okay? And you need to be able to do them all. You need to be able to look at a graph, you need to be able to look at 2 points, and be able to determine what is your equation of that line. So what I want to do is I want to use our slope formula, all right? Where, given points, and I'm going to call this x sub 1 comma y sub 1 and x sub 2 comma y sub 2, we can write our slope formula as y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, all right? And so when you have these points, all right, like -1, -2, and 3, 4, what I want to do is label these. This is x1, this is y1. This is x2, this is y2, all right? And I want to take these numbers and I want to plug them into my slope formula to see what my slope is. So I'm going to do m is equal to, now y sub 2 is 4 minus y sub 1, which is -2. So I'm going to put in -2 over 3 minus, in this case, x sub 1. So x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So x sub 1 was -1. And what I like about this example is that you're having to deal with some negatives here, and that's totally okay. But remember what happens. If you subtract a negative, this is going to turn into a positive. So really this is going to turn into 4 plus 2 over 3 plus 1. So then you get a slope of 6 over 4. Okay, now this slope can be simplified. 6 over 4 can be simplified down to 3/2. And that's the slope that we want to use for this equation. Now, we have identified our slope, because remember, all we need to do to write an equation is we need a slope and we need a y-intercept. So now, what I want to look at is how do we figure out what our y-intercept is? So find the y-intercept. Okay. And what I want to use is I'm going to use my equation y equals, in this case, mx plus b. All right. So x plus b. Now what I have is I have my slope. okay? And so my slope, I'm going to put this in purple here. My slope is 3/2. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to write out 3 over 2 times an x value. Now, when we have two different points to choose from, because you have an x value and a y value here, and an x value and a y value here. Now, it doesn't matter what we do for this, which point we use, but we got to use one of them. Now, personally, I'm going to use 3, 4 because my numbers are positive, okay? I could use -1 and -2, and that would be fine, but I'm going to use 3 and 4. So what I know is that I've got, an x value in this case. I'm going to use red for x is equal to 3. And blue, I'm going to use y is equal to 4. And all I'm doing is I'm taking this point here, and I'm using those values. I could use -1, -2 if I wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug those in. So I'm going to plug in 4 in for y. I'm going to plug in 3 in for x. And then I'm going to add b. Now, the reason why I do this is because I can fulfill every value once I have my slope, and I don't have b, and I can now solve for b in this equation. So let's do this. Now, we're going to involve some fractions here, and that's all right. But what I want to do is I'm going to write 3 as a fraction and do it as 3 over 1, and then I just multiply across. So 3 times 3 is going to give me 9 over 2 plus b, and then that's equal to 4. Now, if I wanted to solve this equation for b, I would subtract 9/2 from both sides, okay? Now, the problem is that I've got a fraction, 4 over 1 minus 9/2, and they don't have common denominators. But the common denominator between 1 and 2 is just going to be 2. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 2. So then we get 8 over 2 minus 9 over 2. And so we end up getting 8 minus 9, which gives us -1 over my common denominator of 2. And -1/2 is equal to b. Okay? Now, the thing of it is that even if you graphed this, you wouldn't be able to clearly identify what your y-intercept is, all right, from that graph. So, because it's a fraction, that's okay. We may have to be dealing with those fractions, but we have to do that algebraically because looking at a graph isn't always going to help us, okay? All right, let's take a look at the very, very last page. All right, so we've got a word problem here. And this one says, and our goal here is to interpret the slope and the y-intercept. So, Allie received a gift card for her local coffee shop. Every time she goes to the shop, she gets a medium coffee. The graph shows the gift card balance at 2 points. Create a linear equation that models this situation. Interpret the slope and the y-intercept. What do those two things mean? How can Allie determine the number of medium coffees she can buy with the gift card if she does not know the original value of the card? So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a linear equation that models the situation. All right, and we're going to need a calculator for this because I have these 2 points, okay? I have 2, $19.70, and I have 4, $14.40. So it's important that we label our x-axis. The x means medium cups of coffee. Y means the gift card balance in dollars, all right? So when we have these points, they mean something, all right? So when x is 2, well, that means 2 medium cups of coffee have been purchased, and the total, the balance left on the gift card is $19.70, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to write these points out, all right? I'm going to write out 2, 19.70, and I'm going to write 4, 1440, okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to label these as x1, y1, and then x2, y2. So if I want to calculate my slope, I'm going to do y2 minus y1 over I did that wrong. minus y1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay, so now to calculate our slope, you know, I want to do 14.4 minus 19.70 over 4, over 4, then minus 2. Okay, so now our slope, all right, the bottom part's going to be 2. And if we subtract 1970 from 1440, this is going to give us a negative 5.3. Okay, so if I take negative 5.3 and divide that by 2, all right, what this ends up giving us is we get this decimal, we get negative 2.65. Now, think about what this is, all right? This is cost per cup of coffee, okay? And that's what the slope represents. So now let's figure out what the y-intercept is, okay? So our y-intercept, if we know what the slope is, and I'm going to use purple for the slope, so m is equal to negative 2.65. And it doesn't matter which one of these points I'm going to use. I'll use the first one here. I'll use that x is equal to 2 and that y is equal to 1970. All right, and I'm going to plug that into y equals mx plus b. All right, so I'm going to do 1970 is equal to negative 2.65 times 2, and then plus b, because we don't know what b is. All right, so if I take negative 2.65 times 2, that's going to give me negative 5.3, plus b is then equal to 1970. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to now solve this equation for b by adding 5.3, all right, and then you get that b is equal to 25, all right, and that's the value of the gift card, all right. So this is the value of the gift card. And the reason why I know that is because I haven't, you know, if you think about it, if you come over here and you plot this point here at 0, 25, okay, that's the point 0, 25. What that means is that you've bought 0 cups of coffee and the gift card balance is $25, okay? So, and let's talk about this, okay? Let's talk about, interpreting the slope. So this whole thing about interpreting. So let's interpret the slope, okay? If our slope is negative $2.65, all right, per cup of coffee, okay? What we could say is that the cost of each cup of coffee is $2.65. However, what we want to talk about is the slope itself. The slope is negative, okay? And one thing that we could say is that the balance on the gift card is decreasing by $2.65 per each time you purchase a coffee or a medium coffee, okay? And then interpret the y-intercept, which we've already kind of done. Interpret the y-intercept is that 0, 25 is the original value of the gift card, all right, or the initial value, okay? And then the last question that they wanted us to figure out was, how can Allie determine the number of medium coffee she can buy with the gift card if she does not know the original value of the card? One of the things that you could look at here is you can draw a line on this graph that connects these 2 points and figure out, if you have this information, all right, this has an x-intercept of 9, meaning that you can purchase 9 coffees and then the balance on your gift card is 0, okay? All right, that's all I got for this. Kind of a lot, but, you know, we'll spend some time working on this, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye!